Welcome back, everybody. The DM murdered one of his players over an argument because the druid player really wanted to be an owlbear, and he just would not let him happen. So session's canceled while we hide the body.
But Josh, you said it was in the movie.
Man, shut the fuck up! You're not turning into an owlbear. Get back in the grave.
Damn it!
Get back in there.
I
wish I had a shovel. If I had a shovel sound
I
effect.
want to use wild shape 6 times.
No. Bro, we didn't even get to that point yet. Okay. Hello.
I want a paladin sword. I want a paladin sword that can shoot, and it can also become a dagger, and it lets me cast haste and magic weapon at the same time.
Please don't talk about that fucking sword. I hate that fucking sword so fucking much.
I'm just gonna put Matt in the grave, literally.
Yeah. Anyway, hello, we're here. Sam is here.
Hi.
Isaiah is here.
I am here.
Matt is unfortunately here.
Let me out. Let me out.
No, I don't think I will.
Ever. Oh, well.
Just turns to a skeleton of bread.
So, as some of you listening may have noticed from the references, we're talking about the D&D movie, except we're not actually talking about the D&D. But we are going to reference it a little tiny bit. I had an idea recently. I was inspired by the muses from on high. And by that, I mean, I was listening to another podcast called the Eldritch Lorecast, and they mentioned a particular scene in the D&D movie Honor Among Thieves. For those listening, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything major. Unless you're one of those little bitches who considers any information about a movie at all as a spoiler, then I guess I'm spoiling it. But if you're a reasonable human being, I'm not spoiling anything.
Do you guys remember when Lord Soth cut off Driss's hand in the movie? Wild.
Shut the fuck up.
What are you? I have zero context for anything.
No,
you
neither
can
of
say.
these characters appear in that movie. Matt's just saying words into a microphone on the internet, as you do. But what I want to talk about today, this harrowing day, is
God, it is very harrowing.
Is the idea of cinematic game design. Cinematic is the word I'm gonna use here as the title, I guess. I don't know, whatever. Cinematic is the phrase we're gonna use, but I don't only mean making your game feel like a movie. I'm talking generally about how you can design, or in the case of if you're running your own game, how you can hack to make your game have more of a cinematic vibe, a la a movie, a la a video game, a la anime, a la cartoon, like any of that shit. Everything's on the table. So I'm going to explain, before we really get into it, what the fuck I mean by that. Past 7 seconds, right? I can say fuck.
It's been well past 7 seconds,
yes.
yeah.
Is it for 7 seconds or is it for 7 minutes?
7 seconds.
Oh, okay, we're good.
Yes, so let me explain what the hell I'm talking about. So another way you could describe cinematic game design is sort of selling the fantasy of a character idea, or selling the fantasy of the type of game you're trying to play. So in a very broad sense, D&D is trying to sell you the fantasy of being, sort of pseudo superhero fantasy warriors. A game like Vampire Masquerade is selling you the fantasy of being a vampire in the modern age, trying to live out and be secret and do all that political intrigue shit. A game like Cyberpunk is sort of selling you the fantasy of being your sort of rebellious, freedom fightery cyberpunk badass who's going to blow up the Megacorp building. That's, selling the vibe, selling the fantasy, the cinematic feel of what your game is about or what your characters are. So, reason we were talking about the D&D movie reason this was on my brain is there's a scene in Honor Among Thieves where the druid character Doric has to sneak into a castle or a fort or something like that. I think it's more of a fort, but anyway, doesn't matter. She starts the scene as a fly, and then she gets discovered, and then it ends up being sort of like a heist movie style chase sequence. So she goes from like a fly, and then she transforms into a mouse, and then she turns back into a human, and at one point she goes like back into a mouse, and then she like falls out a window and she turns into a bird, and then she goes down to the fucking streets and turns into like a deer. And she wild shapes like six or seven times. I counted. I believe it was 6 in that one scene. And so I was listening to another podcast, the Eldritch Lorecast, who also talk about tabletop things. And they were saying how cool that scene was, and how like, you know, it really sells the fantasy of being a druid, is like doing the crazy shape change to like break in and do your little espionage mission, and then try and dodge the guards by turning into like a small animal or whatever. You know, that whole like cool vibe of like what a druid is kind of supposed to do and what they feel like. Problem is not only does she wild shape 6 times, she also goes from one animal form to another, which also doesn't work. That whole scene just like doesn't work, rules as written. Could not actually do that. First problem, the druid does not have that many wild shapes. You get 2, you would, unless you're level 20, you'd run out real quick. Also, the way she sort of snuck in and like the chase sequence itself, you know, might be kind of tricky to run depending how you're doing it. There's some parts where it's like, oh, that would be a bit potentially hard. So, you know, rules as written, that doesn't work. But it's a great idea. It's a very fun idea. It really hones in on the fantasy of a druid. So then the again, sort of aping off the other, you know, the Eldritch Lorecast, they started talking about like, oh, you know, how could you make it work, and what kind of design might you have to do to actually make this function in a game? And then that sort of spiraled into a greater conversation. So that's what I mean by cinematic game design, is like, with this specific example, what kind of design do you have to do to make it so that scene in the movie as the druid could actually work in your tabletop, you know, in your tabletop campaign, in your session, and it would be cool and not, you know, or like, you know, would make it flow well. Feel so cinematic.
I do have an idea specifically for like the wild shape druid, you know. So one thing that you could do is, instead of making wild shape, you know, I transform into this creature and I get their stat block. All right. You could basically give so much like how the undead druid warlock has temporary hit points when they do their form. You could give the druid temporary hit points, and while they have those temporary hit points on their turn, as a bonus action, they can wild shape to whatever creature, you know, as long as they have it. And then, you know, you can put an arbitrary limit on it, like fucking a minute, like most. You know,
so rather than it being an ammo count, it's like a timed thing.
Yeah. Just because then you give the player a little bit more flow, and a little bit more control over it. Obviously, you'd still have to do something like, oh, you know, you're limited to these stat blocks, or you'd have to limit it a little bit more in certain regards. But because you're also allowing more freedom, it doesn't feel as whatever. Like, and part of the reason why I don't really like, you know, playing druid in D&D is because of that. Like, I really like druids.
Yes. I believe we have the same beef with druid in 5e is love the fantasy of the druid, yet sort of disappointed that the mechanics limit you quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my big thing. So another reason I started thinking about this idea is Everyone Take a Shot, powered by the Apocalypse games, I think do this really, really well.
Oh, baby.
And Dungeon World, I love the way the druid works in Dungeon World, and I'll tease that because I'll explain it more later. But one of the reasons I got annoyed is because I played Dungeon World and then I went to play 5e, and I was annoyed that the 5e druid was not as cool as how the Dungeon World druid works. So, you know.
Yeah. I get it. I do.
Yeah.
There's fucking something.
There's another little point that I wanted to note, and again came up on the Eldritch Lorecast, and I was like, oh yeah, that's an interesting. There is a thing, because, like, you can make a lot of really crazy cinematic mechanics, but you do have to account for the fact that in a movie, the camera can focus on one character for an extended period of time, and you as the viewer are sort of along for the ride with that one character. In a game, if you focus on one character for a long extended period of time, the other 3 to 5 players, you know, kind of sitting around doing nothing most of the time. It's sort of the it's the hacker problem in the Cyberpunk game, right? The hacker does their cool hacker thing, everyone else sits there with their dick in their hands.
I do love that.
So,
wow.
You know, a movie doesn't have this consideration. The game does. So even when you are trying to make something have a really cool, like, fantasy, a really cool thematic style to it, you do have to you do have to account for that problem and consider it, you know, if you're hacking your game to try and do something cool and exciting, you know, let's say, oh, I'm going to give the fighter this really cool ability. You have to keep in mind that, like, all right, cool. So you're giving one player the cool thing, and if that takes up too much attention, everyone else might be potentially annoyed that they either A, they don't get to do the cool thing, or or B, when the fighter's doing their cool thing, everyone else has to sit there and pay attention to the fighter because of how cool he is. Mm-hmm. That kind of shit is a big consideration anytime you're doing some, like, hacking or fucking making your own goddamn game.
Okay, so we talked about Dungeon World, all right? I have to get this thought out before I lose it, because I was thinking about this earlier. Another way that you can do cinematic feel is throwing away the current turn system.
Yeah. So
I don't dislike it for the way that D&D functions currently, but there are often times where I'm like, wow, I really wish that
I could do something out of turn. Or, like, we could swap up the orders. And I kind of wish that the way that D&D worked is that you roll, like, everybody rolls for initiative, but those become initiative slots rather than, oh, hey, this is your initiative, this is when you go every turn, because then we run into issues where, so, like, I have, you know, for instance, you know, we're fighting a wizard. And I was actually thinking about this when we played Sunday. You know, the wizard, the archmage has fucking counterspell. Anybody can burn that reaction for counterspell, but, like, if I'm the first person to go, he's gonna counter my spell no matter what. You know, if it's to go bother him or whatever. So, like, you know, now I'm stuck sitting here like, okay, my plan is, you know, fucking Garbodor because I can't do what I want because I have to be the person. Like, if I do it, my spell is the one that's going to get countered. You know, it may free someone else up for it, but, like, that doesn't help me in the long run, you know, or us in the long run. Yeah. So what you're kind of hitting on is tied to the next thing.
I had a feeling.
Yeah. So you have to account for your, like, one player gets to be too cool for two. But that's, you know, you can mitigate that. But the idea, what you're talking about, Sam, is this thing I noted down is the mechanics of your game should not stop you from the cool fantasy idea you have in your head of your character. Right? And so, just to throw out, I wrote down a few examples. The mechanics shouldn't stop the fighter from being able to charge the dragon's fire breath with their shield up and live. The game shouldn't stop the barbarian from being able to rage and take on 4 dudes, you know, 1v4 with no effort. To take it out of the realm of D&D, your Cyberpunk game, the Netrunner should be able to hack and manipulate the area that the team is operating in to help them with the run. You know, shouldn't get in the way of that, because all those ideas, what I'm hitting at is, like, cool fantasy idea. Oh, what's some really badass shit a fighter could do? Holds up their shield, you know, dragon unleashes fire breath. They charge and push their way through the fire breath. Dragon stops breathing and realizes all of a sudden the fucking fighter's right under his neck and they stabs him. Right? Like, cool badass shit a fighter could do. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I kind of have to be an asshole because you said let the barbarian fight off 4 goons with no real issue, and I've just thought of, did I ever have that?
I mean, this is the thing. D&D, or not even D&D. This isn't even a D&D reg. If you're gonna do a sort of grid-based, turn-based combat system, you are limiting a certain amount of that cinematic vibe. It is harder to do if you want to do a sort of tactical board game style combat game. It's just harder. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's obstacles in the way, right? In D&D, can the fighter charge into the dragon's breath with their shield up? No, but like you could take the shield master feat and kind of
they can with shield master
narrate. You could sort of narrate that's what you're doing. As opposed to a game like Dungeon World, though, where you can literally say, all right, cool, so the dragon breathes fire, and the fighter player can go, I would like to charge directly into the fire with my shield up, at which point the GM could say, okay, cool, roll me a defy danger with your constitution, let's see if you can manage this, and then you literally get to do it, right? Like, there's no, that's all within the mechanical bounds.
Yes, I think the easy mid-ground here is, if you want to keep your grid-based stuff, but you also want to be able to just go buck wild sometimes. I don't think there's a better system out there than narrative declarations / light or dark side points. Fuck me. To be able to just be like, I do this thing.
Yep.
And then the GM sort of just like, all right, well, that's kosher. You burnt your whatever the fuck point. Now you did it.
Yes, you can do. There is some of that there. However, that's essentially what you're doing there is ignoring. You're basically saying, I would like to turn off the grid-based battle map for a moment and just do whatever the fuck I want, and then we'll turn it back on after my turn is done, right? So, It sort of reinforces my point that, with the grid-based battle map, it is harder to do. Not impossible, but definitely harder. And yes, that is sort of a middle ground to say, every once in a while, we're just going to ignore it, which is totally valid. And honestly, when a lot of people are playing D&D and they want to do a crazy cinematic thing, that's why you don't go to the grid map. You make a bunch of you make a bunch of skill checks, or you make some tool proficiency checks, or you narrate something about how you use a spell to do X, Y, and Z skill check. This is why I love skill challenges so much, because they are literally this. They are cinematic game design. Explain how you do the cool thing, roll the fucking dice, you succeed, that's dope. Or you fail, unfortunate, Mm-hmm. Right? If you wanted to do the druid, let's say you're playing 5e and you wanted to do the scene with Doric from the movie. Okay. As the GM, you could say, all right, Doric's player, just ignore the rules of Wild Shape. Do whatever the fuck you want for this scene. We're going to do a skill challenge roll. You have infinite wild shapes. Go buck wild. Tell me how you do it. And we'll make rolls back and forth and see what you do. Right? That would be how you could do something like that in 5e. But what you're doing is actively telling the game to fuck off in some regard, right? So what I'm suggesting is, if you want to hack stuff like this, think about how you can make a mechanic that will back up the narrative. I feel I've said this multiple times, but mechanics, this is literally my favorite topic, by the way. In tabletop, this is my shit. Mechanics that reinforce that fantasy, that cinematic vibe. This is my ultimate shit. This is why I love Powered by the Apocalypse so much, because I feel like it gives me the most potential to do this. And it's not the only system. It's just, the one I like the most and sort of hit me the hardest earliest on.
Yeah.
And then the last point I wanted to make about this, or I could have some examples, because I did bring some examples. Balance need not apply. Get the fuck out of here with this balance shit. Not literally, but a little bit. I think invoking the fantasy of your type of game that you're making, or let's say you're hacking, right? Invoking the fantasy takes priority over any kind of idea of balance, right? Make the cool mechanic, worry about the balance later. And if the balance is gonna shit on the cool mechanic, then prioritize the cinematic design over the balance. That's what I say. Now, obviously, can't go. I'm not saying I'm not saying let your paladin just one-shot everything with Divine Smite or some shit. Like, obviously,
I don't know.
Obviously there's a limit to how like woohoo crazy you can get. But if you're sitting at a crossroads and it's like, all right, either I can make this cool or I can balance it out and it's going to be way less cool, prioritize the cinematic cool design. I'm sure there will be people that will disagree with me. I do not care. That is what I prioritize, that over all things, because I think in the end, you just get something more satisfying, you know? And the main reason I say that is like, tabletop games are not competitive, so you don't need to think about them in that way, you know? That's the thing. Now, where balance does become relevant, and the time I do worry about balance, is anytime you have a character ability or something that shits on somebody else's thing, right? Basically a meme in the D&D community, how if you want to play a cool ranger, play literally anything but ranger at this point. Because so many other subclass options are there that aren't ranger that will give you the ranger vibe better.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason that's a meme is because those abilities are shitting on the ranger. Right? Like, that's why that meme exists. It's like, oh, I want to play a cool character with a pet and like a sick long-range weapon. Oh, play a Battlesmith Artificer. What? Shouldn't I play a ranger? Nah, Battlesmith does it better. Just reflavor your Robo-Dog as something else or some shit. I don't know.
Lemo.
Yeah.
Right? You know? That's where balance becomes like a big deal.
I wouldn't even say that's balance.
It's almost not balance. It's kind of a different. Yeah.
That's just kind of game design in general.
It's like, niche protection. Well, the reason
you just don't want people to have too much in the like. You can have similar classes, like, you know, having a Battlesmith Artificer. I have a gun, you know, and Ranger, I have a bow or a crossbow or whatever. Like, that's fine. Like, having that overlap is fine. But like, once it becomes, you know, there's no way to differentiate between, you know, Beastmaster and fucking Battlesmith. It's just like, so why would I play the worst one?
Yeah, well, the reason I think that I would consider that kind of stuff under the umbrella of balance is because sometimes the reason you end up shitting on another class is because numerically your class just does the thing better, right? Like,
yeah,
Paladin in some regards shits on Fighter because they can kind of do the Fighter thing better. Right,
numerically have just more utility in a lot of regards.
Yeah, like numerically speaking, that's kind of why I think it falls under the balance. But
this is why Fighter should just have all of the Battlemaster shit, and Battlemaster should just not be a subclass. Just saying,
or just make it Battlemaster.
Yeah, just make Battlemaster just better at using maneuvers, and maneuvers just available to everyone. I'm not going to get back onto Fighter. It upsets me so much. So this is a common problem in, like, you know, hero-based shooters or MMOs. It's just, you will have characters that, you know, are just straight up better than others at the same job.
Yeah, like, at the same gig, yeah.
Like, for instance, look at any of the ranged DPS in Final Fantasy XIV. Like, you're going to go, okay, so which one am I playing? And they're going to tell you you're playing Bard if you want to be the most effective, because machinist damage is tied to some stupid shit. And Dancer is just chilling.
All right, Sam, don't go too deep down the 14 hole.
I know.
If you want to play a hero, just don't play Astro. Kidding.
You know, you say that, but Astro is one of the more popular heroes. Can't wait for them to change it again and then just not be popular. Anyway, my point is that, like, it's obviously just an example, but like, it's a subset of
balance.
Yeah, it's like, balance comes into play when you're doing this, because once these things have the same identity, you really want to have them be good at different things. When you have something that's just better in every single regard than something else, or the thing that's good is too niche, then everybody's just going to play the thing that's good at everything, because if it's niche, especially in a tabletop game, your DM has to constantly
address it. Yeah,
take into account that specific thing.
I will say though, there is this kind of gray area middle ground where a thing can be better on paper than another, but there's still enough going on between the two that you still might have fun with one or the other. So like an example I'm thinking of here, a lot of people have pointed out in Dungeon World that the paladin, same comparison again, the paladin is just better than the fighter in Dungeon World. A lot of people have mentioned that. And to some regard that is true, and like numerically you're like, yeah, that kind of checks out. But the fighter gets a couple of really cool cinematic abilities, or moves in the case of Dungeon World, that make them feel different and cool enough that even though the paladin's a little bit better, you still kind of want to play the fighter because they still have some of their own cool shit, you know?
That comes into like
there's a delicate middle ground.
Flavor,
yeah,
is really what it is. Like a lot of people, going back to 14 because this just an easy one. Like a lot of people will play Machinist because Machinist is just cool.
Yeah,
literally the only reason. Machinist is just cool. You mash lots of buttons and you do really cool things. That's it. That's why you would play Machinist over the other ranged DPS, and it's just like, cool. I understand. Like if you have that flavor, which can be harder to even come across in tabletop, where like especially D&D, where it's like, I hit the thing. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So okay, okay. Well, so Sam, now that you say that, all right, I want to. This is a good segue. This is a good segue because I wrote down a couple of cinematic examples, and I didn't want to just do the shit on D&D Parade like I usually did. So I was like, all right, what are a couple of cool little moments in D&D that do actually feel like good cinematic game design?
There are some.
One of them I said is the Paladin's Divine Smite.
Correct.
For a couple of reasons. Right. First and foremost, obviously, you know, and actually, I should say real quick, when we're talking about sort of feeding into the fantasy of a particular class or character type, we're generally talking about the most generic, stereotypical version of that thing, right? So, yes, there are lots of different kinds of paladins you could potentially make, but we're talking about when you say the word paladin, what is the most stereotypical thing that comes to mind, right? So part of that, in this particular case, you think of the paladin, you think of, oh yeah, they got their big fucking longsword, it glows with holy energy, and they give the fucking bazinga smackdown to some demons or some undead or some
bazinga.
Shit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The guy in the page of Paladins in the Player's Handbook.
Yeah.
That dude.
Yeah, that
just
like
pointed at that guy.
That orc
this
guy.
Orc guy.
Yeah, he cool. Yeah. So the reason Divine Smite is really cool is because first and foremost, obviously, it lets you do the big bazinga smackdown damage, right? Roll lots of dice, do big number. That's good. However, if the Divine Smite was just that on its own, it wouldn't be really that evocative because, you know, if all it was more damage, you could just call the attack Biga Swinga and then it does the same thing, right?
Yo, let me hit him with the big swoop.
Yeah, you could just call you could call Paladin's Divine Smite Big Swoop and it does the same damage and then it's not really as cool anymore. So, but the other two parts of Divine Smite that I really like are really what reinforce the magical, holy, like, smiting part, which is A, Divine Smites use spell slots.
Yep.
So that's reinforcing in a mechanical sense. You are telling me mechanically, this thing that fuels magic fuels my Divine Smite. Ergo, the fantasy reinforcement there is Divine Smite is magical. On top of that, you do extra damage to fiends and undead. Why? Holy Warrior hit the undead and the demons harder because that's their thing. That's cool cinematic design. That's one of, honestly, the fiend and undead part is my favorite part about Divine Smite by far.
I'm to build on this. This is kind of why Ranger it feels like absolute Garbodor.
Yes,
because while Ranger,
favorite enemy,
again, favorite enemy, you're good at hitting thing, but only one thing. Unlike Paladin, where it's everything.
Well, also favorite enemy doesn't actually make you better at fighting them in any way.
Yeah, that too.
Makes you better at like tracking and knowing about them, but not actually fighting them.
Yeah,
or hunting them. You know, doing the Ranger thing where you hunt.
Yeah.
No hunt. Yeah.
But my point being that, like, you know, you look at this and you go, oh, so why don't I do better in combat against them, even though it's the thing that I'm supposed to be good at fighting? And then the wizard just kind of looks at you and shrugs.
And you know why? You know what? And I guarantee you what the reason why they didn't want to give Ranger like big dick damage against their favorite enemy or whatever, because of balance. And in that scenario, I say throw the balance out. That's a scenario
well,
like disregard.
With Tasha's,
Like
they did a little bit with
foe.
Tasha's, yes.
Yeah, like as someone who's DMing for someone that's playing a Swarmkeeper Ranger, he's good.
Here's
It's
the
good
problem.
now.
though, Matt.
I will just say, like a Swarmkeeper Ranger, getting the extra spells, a lot of utility spells, doing the not fucking paladin levels of damage, but outpacing other people in the party that you think would be doing way more damage than they are.
So,
Like the Tasha's helped significantly.
but all that did was
Rangers.
help their playability, Matt.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. Favored Foe is nice for making Ranger more numerically effective. Favored Foe is a garbage cinematic design because it doesn't reinforce the Ranger at all. It just takes it from, oh, the Ranger's only good at fighting a niche group of people to, Ranger's just better at fighting everyone. Fuck it. It doesn't invoke the fantasy in any way. Nothing about Favored Foe, because Favored Foe, you're just marking. It's just Hunter's Mark. You're just marking your target. It doesn't really reinforce the vibe in any cool way. Whereas Favored Enemy was trying to.
Yeah, I feel like Favorite Enemy was trying to, but I mean, with Hunter's Mark, that could also be something either as you, or not Hunter's Mark, sorry. Favorite Foe, that could be something as you as the player or you as the DM. You know, you do the anime thing where you specifically target in that guy and you're like, Favorite Foe.
Yeah, but that's not really about
Target
the fantasy of the Ranger. Because part of the fantasy of the Rangers, they're better at dealing with a specific kind of thing, right? And that's not really doing it. So if I were to make Favored Foe have more of like actual good cinematic design and like reinforce that fantasy, I would combine Favored Foe and Favorite Enemy. You pick what your favorite enemy is. So let's say, you know, monstrosities. When you're fighting monstrosities, you can mark them for an extra D4 damage or an extra D6 damage. You know, like I would probably make it more damage, make it feel better. Now we're kind of reinforcing the vibe because it's like, oh, I'm particularly better at killing these fuckers as opposed to just anybody. You know what I mean? Shit, there was another point there. Whatever. So yes, Favored Foe is good in the sense that it made the Ranger more usable, but it didn't really help with the fantasy of the class for me. I mean, and there is a little bit of a flavor text in it where it's like, oh, you sort of focus in on a particular target, kind of like you were saying, Matt. And there's something there, like that's okay, but it's not quite the, like, you know, it's not quite the moment. What is it when Aragorn like sniffs the fucking dirt or something? He's like, there's orcs here, right? Was it something like that? What did he do?
Put his ear to the ground, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
He used like tracking, like Native American
like
tracking.
that. It's not quite in that realm.
I do think that they should just have both in general. Like,
I mean,
more damage to everything, but then even more damage.
Yes.
It's basically just have smite, but
yes,
like
smite. Yes, divine smite. Just do divine smite. You did it already.
You get to pick the smite.
Yeah, literally.
Like, you do 1d6 to this, but you do 2d6 to this.
Literally, yes.
Well, I think according to the 1D&D playtest that we read a while ago, I think, aren't they just going to get Colossal Slayer? Just do 1d8 damage?
They are specifically with the
hunter, yes, but that one, okay, Colossal Slayer is like even more vague because you just do more damage to someone who's hurt, which is like, huh? That doesn't invoke anything.
Beef with that. I think I brought it up at the
We're not going down that rabbit hole.
Also, side note, have we done a Ranger episode yet?
Yes,
I don't think we have.
Yes, we did.
We did?
Yeah.
I thought we talked about the 1D&D Ranger. But
you're right. We talked about the 1D&D Ranger, but not
that's what I'm asking. Did I step into the wrong episode? Are we?
No, we can talk about Ranger.
I'm cutting this off. We're not doing Ranger. No, I'm cutting this off. Anyway,
just a little splash of what Ranger will be when we eventually talk.
Basically.
About it.
So yes, Divine Smite, super like cinematic, evocative. If I'm going to once again steal the phrase from Dale Kingsmail, vague and evocative. all that hits the notes for me. Another good example in 5e, Cleric's Divine Intervention is fucking god tier design. Biggest brainest. Because the most like perfect cinematic moment, the thing you think of when you think of the really badass cleric character, is homeboy looks up at the sky and says, "Hey yo god, slap me a crisp high five," and then he does, and he pulls out a fucking lightsaber or some bullshit that God just gave him. Like, Divine Intervention is amazing. And
did God just give that man a glicky?
Yes. He says, "Hey yo god, slap me some skin," and then he hands him an AK. And he goes, "Hey yo, these undead's gonna suck my nuts." Like, you know, like that is the fantasy of the cleric, right? Like, ask your god for help, crazy god shit happens, you know? That's the fucking summoner in fucking Final Fantasy, right? Like, hey yo, smite this bitch. Like, and that's why I love the scene in Critical Role when Pike gets the fucking Divine Intervention off, because Matt Mercer just goes, "All right, well, your god just smites the shit out of that dragon." Fucking lit. I mean, I've raved about. We did do a cleric episode, and I know I talked about Divine Intervention. So we've already gone down that road. There's little tweaks I would make to Divine Intervention, but otherwise, fucking love it. Absolutely love it. And I think we're all on the same page on that, right? Like,
yeah. With the
right.
With my personal caveat of
the caveat,
let the first one go off.
Let the first one be
automatically.
Free. Yeah.
I have one. I wonder if you're going to bring it up, so I'm just going to wait.
I only have 3 from D&D, so probably not.
Okay, all right.
The last one I'm going to mention from D&D is, this one's a little more low key and maybe not something people would expect as much. The Bard's Song of Rest. Really like Song of Rest. It's really basic, right? All it does is you get a little bit more healing on a short rest. But the reason I really like it is because the fantasy part of the fantasy of the Bard is you sort of, you know, make everyone feel better. Give them a little pat on the back. Maybe you make everyone drinks. You play a nice beat, you know, so you heal a little bit more. And like, it's a real small one. And that's the thing about like the idea of cinematic game design. It doesn't need to be a crazy, effective, or powerful mechanic like Divine Smite. It can be something small, but if it evokes that fantasy of what you think of when you think of the class or the playbook or, you know, the role or whatever, you know, if it invokes that vibe, then it's doing its job. Like, that's all I need. I don't need it to be super effective. That's kind of why, like, I don't really give a shit about like how effective, like, statistically, is Song of Rest good? I don't know or care. Probably not mathematically, but who the fuck cares? I mean, well, it's free actually, so I guess it.
I was gonna say.
I guess it has to be. It's free, so it's automatically.
Literally.
But like, you know, maybe it should scale. Maybe it should. I don't give a shit. The point is, it's cool and evocative. You know, and shit. Even Counter Charm, even though it sucks balls, I love the idea of Counter Charm. I love the premise of Counter Charm. Like, yeah, the Bard is so good at being the like star of the show that they could like break everyone out of the charm from the succubus and make everyone look at the Bard because goddamn, he's so cool, or he's so hot, or he's such an idiot. You know, like you can get the attention away. And unfortunately, Counter Charm is so specific you never get to use it. But God, I love the idea.
There's that, you know, too niche to actually be useful.
Yeah.
So I to be on the opposite end, something that I really dislike in games, D&D specifically doesn't do this very well, is the way that spellcasting feels too restrictive in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because it like, okay. Being a rules nerd, I do appreciate when specifics are laid out. However, if things are too specific, you get to the point where you're just like, okay, so like this spell is garbage.
Sam,
that's it.
Is the thing that you want is an ability to just weave magical bullshit?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I wasn't going to mention this necessarily, but since you're bringing this up, I feel like. Everyone take another shot. Here comes the Dungeon World talk. Dungeon World,
where this was going.
The wizard class has an ability called Ritual. What this lets you do is, this is the kind of skill I like to call weave magical bullshit. When you draw on a place of power to create a magical effect, tell the GM what you're trying to achieve. Ritual effects are always possible, but the GM will give you 1 to 4 of the following conditions. And then there's a list of conditions. I fucking love that because you're like, I don't have a specific spell for this scenario, but what if I have a little chit chat with the GM and do a little weave magical bullshit and make something work? I fucking love that. And yes, I deeply wish 5e had something like that. And I know why it doesn't, but god damn.
Yeah, it's just frustrating when you're like, wow, I'm supposed to be this, like, literally Divine Intervention does this, yes. Because it's just,
yes.
And then just Wizard doesn't have anything that does this.
Imagine if Wizard had a thing where it was like...
I mean, Wizard has Wish, but it is quite late.
Wish is, like, not the same. It should be, like, something small that your Wizard can just fucking do, because why am I this smart fucking
the smart
loser
part? That's the big thing.
Called
that can't figure out how to do.
Matt, no.
It's cantrip.
Matt, it's
close, but prestidigitation is too limited.
It's cantrip. Everybody gets to first level.
No.
It has.
That's not it. That ain't it, Chief.
It's the correct idea, but it is so poorly executed. It doesn't. Doesn't fit.
If there was a version of prestidigitation that was higher level that could do that, was wider in its options.
The problem with that, Josh, is that there are multiple spells, and that the wizard is the class that gets most of the spells in the game. So it's one of those things where, like, the wizard's like, all right, DM, I'm gonna cast these 3 spells specifically, and now I'm summoning the moon to us.
Yes, I understand, Matt. Here's the thing. What? Here's the problem. All right. Yes.
Why the moon?
I don't know. Okay, hold on, because we just hit like 3 different points.
It's possible. I've seen a video.
We just hit like 3. Okay, first of all, Wish. Let's start with Wish. Yes, Wish is cool and Wish is in the right direction, but A, like Sam mentioned, Wish does have some weird stipulations that can fuck you, and B, Wish is super late game, so you don't really get to use it very much. Both of those are an issue. Other thing, so what Matt's talking about with like prestidigitation and the wizard gets all the spells. Yes, but the way spells are written and structured in 5e, they're very mechanical war game style rules on spells with some few exceptions. And a lot of those spells that have exceptions are the spells that piss people off, i.e. Fabricate. Right?
Oh, hell
yeah, buddy. What I'm suggesting, if you're going to have your spells be in that fashion, give the wizard a divine intervention style ability. And, you'll call it like moment of inspiration. No, that probably wouldn't work. I don't know. Like, basically have an ability where the wizard works out like, if I connect the ley lines here and use these components and mix them with this fluid, and they get to do their like big brain moment.
Do this effect.
To do like GM, can I do X and Y thing to do this random magical effect? And then you handle it the way Dungeon World handles it, where the GM says, yes, here's your stipulations. You could do it for X. It's going to take you an hour. It's going to take you these ingredients. It's going to cost you this much money. You can do it, but you're going to get a weaker version than you're hoping for because of you don't have the right materials, right? Shit like that.
Well, are they not? Was the downcasting thing just a rumor, or?
Well, that was only for one ability. It's not a rumor. It was only on one ability.
Right, but
and even then, downcasting is still not what I'm talking about. Yeah. I want the wizard to be able to do. We're literally divine intervention, right? I want the wizard to be able to say, whatever effect I have in mind, I want to happen, and then you have a little back and forth with your GM. And I'm fine if there's a die roll too, like the wizard tries to roll it and fails. That's fine, totally cool with that too. But yeah, like I want that because, like Sam said, the wizard is so fucking smart. Artificer probably should have this too, actually, now that I'm talking about it. I think this would make sense for Artificer. I think only Wizard and Artificer, though. I don't think anyone else should get this.
Right. Well, there was
literally because Sorcerer is just like, hey, I magic this shit up.
Wizard and Artificer,
I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
A Wizard and Artificer, their whole shtick is, I'm so smart, I know what's going on, I can problem solve.
What were you saying, Matt?
No, I was going to say, because I agree the wizard should have something like this, but my only reasoning that I don't think it's going to happen is because
it's not going to happen.
All the spells, it's all the mechanical thing. Yeah, I get it's mechanical, but
no, Matt, I'm talking about a version of 5e I'm never going to get. I want 5e to do this. I want D&D to do this. It never will.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen because of all the spells. Like what was it? There was the one thing in Critical Role
Here's the thing.
that Matt put a bunch of spell scrolls of a high powerful wizard, and then Caleb's character was able to put together to be like, oh, this guy's making a phylactery. If he did these 3 spells specifically, you can create like a pseudo phylactery and avoid
Sure.
oh shit, this guy's real big brain, and then just pockets the 3 fucking spell scrolls
Yeah.
like a wizard.
Like, I mean, yeah, and that's a cool, good
Wizards
scene.
are really the worst fucking loot goblins, aren't they?
They are.
Oh yeah.
That's a cool, good idea for a scene. The problem there is that required Matt to have pretty deep knowledge of the game to know what 3 spells would work. Do they all cooperate? Is my player
Right.
going to put 2 and 2 together? Right? Like, there's a lot
Yeah.
going on there. And I know none of this is going to happen in D&D because D&D is not a cinematic priority game. They don't prioritize that. That's just not how they design the game. So I know
So
it's not going to happen, but I would like it.
It's weird because it's not designed that way.
But they talk
most
about it that
people
way.
They
Yes.
talk about the game being run
so
that
I-
way.
I think-
Most people try to run the game that way,
Yes.
especially with, again, the Critical Role boom.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think the problem that we're having with that specifically, and I think I've mentioned this many fucking times, is that people when they talk about D&D are used to hearing stories about
Stories
third
about
edition.
D&D.
Stories about specifically third edition, where shit was a little bit wilder, like
That's-
because
I mean-
there was less balance
Yeah.
and there was just more shit.
Yeah, there's probably
Where-
some of that going on too. Although third edition sort of lucked into that scenario because they were still really mechanically, mathematically focused too.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I would say even more so.
More
But the
so,
thing
actually,
is that, but the thing is that they didn't care about balance as much because they just
True.
kind of shit out products like
They
a
did.
fucking machine gun, like
Yeah, what, a book every 3 months?
something like that.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
So, like,
It's
We have 3 different players' handbooks, Dungeon Master's Guide, and
Yeah.
monster manuals. Like,
Literally-
fucking what?
literally people want to do the Doric Honor Among Thieves scene. They want to do that, and the game just says no. You know? Like, that's the problem with 5e. People have the idea. The movie is what people think 5e is. That's what it should be in people's brains. But the game fights you.
Yeah, because most of the time, like I'm assuming, like we've all played in a campaign with a druid or someone who's transformed into an animal to like sneak in somewhere and spy on someone.
In a campaign, no, but I have watched.
No? Oh, okay. Well,
No,
it's
surprisingly.
happened to me, and 9 times out of 10, it's always been like, all right, I'm gonna be a spider, or I'm just gonna be a rat, or I'm gonna be the merchant who works for the guy I'm trying to spy on. Yeah, he has a pet donkey for some reason. I'll just be the new donkey. And it's like, why
Right.
would you do that?
And then you break in, and then one roll blows their cover, and then they go, oh no, now I'm fucked.
Yep.
And they can't do anything. Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, and it kills the whole thing.
99% of the time.
So it's like, yeah. I understand D&D's not going to do this. I'm just
It's
waxing
what we
lyrical
wish
and hopeful.
D&D could be.
Yes. So I would like to use some. To use a couple. Oh, Isaiah, you said you had one. You had an example that I didn't.
I had a few actually.
All right. I mean, you want a rapid fire? Go off.
I mean, first one is Quivering Palm because that's just the coolest shit.
Quivering Palm's a good
fuck,
one,
it's
yes.
It is
cool.
the definition of the like you're already dead thing, and I
Yes.
think it's super cinematic. And
That's
you
a
can
good
trigger it
one.
whenever you
Palm of
want.
death.
Yes.
You could hit somebody, and then a week goes by, and you're like, "Oh, that's right!" Snaps finger, explosion in the background. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
I think one of my personal favorites is Steel Wind Strike. The like literally
Oh, Steel Wind
teleports
Strike,
behind you, nothing personnel kid, but does it 5 times.
So Steel Wind Strike, I would say, is not. It's a good one, but because of the way spells are in 5e, it still feels a little cold and clinical. But it is. I would say Steel Wind Strike sort of teeters that line between the two, which is actually, I mean, in probably in a good way, I would say. So yeah,
What I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of them are spells like what is it? Like a sunbeam or what is it? It's not sunbeam. The one which is just
Moonbeam?
a torrent of like a fucking column of fire shoots up underneath somebody.
Firestorm?
I think it's Flame Strike where you just like
Flame Strike? Yeah.
bazinga and they just explode.
that one's all right. A lot of the thing is like a lot of the spells are sort of. A lot of the spells are there to reinforce the fantasy of being a fucking wizard, you know, or being a cleric. A lot of them are there to reinforce back to the class.
I recognize that they're a technicality, but they do still count. Like
to
a
some
lot of them
degree.
have some really cool cinematic ideas to them.
Anything, but here's this is
Like
important.
Call
distinction.
Lightning is really cool. Like Call Lightning is cool because it specifically gets better when the weather's bad.
So part, okay, yes. So that part of Call Lightning, absolutely good cinematic design. But anything that's like you just do some damage of a specific type, like Flame Strike, I would say no. So like Call Lightning on its own, not so much. The fact that Call Lightning has that, like, it's storming outside, it does more damage. That's good in fantasy and evocative and cinematic. That one really adds
So what
to
I
it.
would say, like another good example is Heat Metal. Like,
Yes,
you are
Heat Metal's a good
so
one.
because you are doing something specific, it is causing damage, not you are causing damage of a
Not
specific
you're just
type.
doing damage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like another thing would be like if acid or poison actually did damage over time.
Yeah,
God
burn
forbid
shit.
we have dots.
Yeah.
Because you're burning. Like the Heat Metal is literally like one of the few dots we have in the game.
Kinda, yeah.
Don't remind me of what I lost, Sam.
Yeah, but like
They took from me.
but like that's it's another example for D&D is like Action Surge. It's like the fighter is literally so good at fighting they can just do more shit
Go
during
buck wild.
fighting. Yeah, like
Yeah, D&D has moments of it, and then you remember that you're still in the grid-based combat, and it like kills some of the momentum.
Honestly,
although I
you
will
said
say
this a few times. It does not for me.
Yeah, same. I was gonna say.
I mean, as someone who's played other games, listen, as someone who's played a lot of other games that don't obey this system, you get so much more epic, like, not even necessarily, you get so much more free flow freedom out of I've grid-based systems.
I've also played those games, don't worry, but like,
not as much as I have, like,
yeah, but really, like,
it makes a difference.
I don't think it does that much. But sure.
Okay, so I am agreeing with Josh here just because of the fact that, like, if you have mecha games, all right, are very cinematic. By locking yourself into a grid-based system, sure, whatever, but like it doesn't ruin it, but it definitely puts, like, I will absolutely after the fact put a cinematic
spin on it in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I don't have the grid-based system, I absolutely am just doing that already.
You feel like, yeah. It's the difference between, like, it's the thing where, in to go off the mecha example, in Souls of Steel, Sam says, I fucking fly up the ridge and snipe the shit out this dude, and like the game doesn't get in the way in any particular way. You don't have to pause and think about, does this work? Can I do this? Blah blah blah.
Fucking ridge.
Yeah. In D&D, you have to go, okay, do I have enough movement? All right, I have enough movement. All right, so I use my move action. Okay, how far away is the enemy? Is it X amount of distance? Okay, is this bad? Do I have any ammo? Okay, I have the ammo. Is it going to do enough damage to kill him? Okay, I hope it's going to do enough damage. There's all these like mechanical stop gates as opposed to a more free flow, a more fiction first game is really what I'm saying.
Don't get me wrong. I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is, to me, I still get that same like cinematic feel that I would otherwise.
I'm not saying it's non-existent, but it's different, and you have to sort of like translate it when you're working through a grid-based tactics game.
To use what I said
also,
before.
I mean, the game mechanics also are translating these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is that, using what I said before about how I translate things cinematically in my head after the fact, if I'm playing a grid-based game, it's just possible that, especially in this scenario, we're just different in that regard. If you're using a grid-based system and you're already translating it in real time cinematically in your head, then it's just that way for you. I can't do that because I'm too focused on exactly what I'm gonna do,
the rules and the
not
tactics.
how it. Yeah, I'm too focused on that specifically. Especially like right now playing a paladin with auras and shit. I am 100% focusing on how many people I have in that aura to basically protect them. Not, okay, so this is just a thing that I give my friends if I stay near them fictionally versus
I
staying-
have to be within 10 feet exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bit different, you know.
Yeah, and it's a different mindset too.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a
Well, so I'm not arguing that. All I'm saying is I get the same fulfillment from a grid-based game that I get from a non-grid-based game. That's all.
Well,
I'm
think-
what I'm
I think it
no,
also
what I'm
might
saying
help-
is that there's a reason why that we have this differing opinion, and it could literally just be the fact that when we think about things cinematically, some of us are too stuck in rules to actually think about it cinematically. When
Oh yeah, that's
the
I'm not-
system
yeah,
is very
that's
limiting.
fine. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think-
I'm not saying that. You know, I'm just doing it better. That's not what I'm saying. It's just you guys said you don't have that. I just said I do have that, and
Yeah, but I'm literally saying that, you know, you can do this while I can't.
I know.
It also
that's-
might
that's
help if
the
you
reason.
have, to be honest, like if you have a dungeon master or whatever they're called in other games, like
game master
someone
is the
who's
generic term.
yeah, someone who's describing things a lot better. Like like even if it's a little bit, description can help make things a little more cinematic than I just hit the
Yes.
thing.
Matt's
Oh,
over
for
here
sure.
roasting me.
like
I'm sorry, but Josh, learn to describe. I'm sorry.
I
There's
do.
a website for it now and everything.
I literally
just get better
described.
at
No,
it,
okay,
forehead.
pause. No, hold on. My two players here need to defend me. I describe shit all the time. Do I not?
wait.
Wait,
I'm
you
sorry.
just said I
You
feel
wait,
attacked.
You
Wait,
just
wait,
threw
wait.
yourself under the bus,
Yeah,
and then
what the
Matt
fuck?
threw you deeper,
I
and then you
was-
got mad that Matt threw you deeper.
I was joking because I was saying Matt was throwing me under the bus because I'm the only GM for Sam currently. So I was saying, oh, Matt is subtweeting me. I was
I'm
joking,
sorry,
but
I
then
thought
Matt
you were-
doubled down.
I
I wasn't expecting the double down.
you know what? Deal with the Josh. Describe better. Here, I'll give you a
I
link to
do.
describe.
He said mold.
Literally, fuck off.
See,
I do.
Fuck. But yeah, it does help if your DM describe. Even like sometimes if combat's taking too long, my brain will shut off and I will describe things a little less. But I at least try and put some tiny bit of effort in describing
Oh,
shit in
for
combat.
sure.
Like, yeah.
I said this really early on in like the one of our how to run a game episodes, and my biggest thing with combat is enthusiasm. If you're enthusiastic about it, if you're explaining it in an enthusiastic way, it's infectious, and the
Okay.
other players will start to see it that way as well. For
So-
sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
Side
definitely.
note: this is all well and good. None of this is about the actual design of the game, which is really the thing I'm harping on.
Yeah, I know, but it's something that and it's hopefully something that will be addressed in the 1D&D
It won't.
DMG. Yeah, it will, because that's one of the things that were talked about in the summit is teaching these things to DMs. Like, hey, you should maybe add a
don't have
little
my
bit
hopes
of
up.
flavor in.
I mean, you can not have your hopes
Yeah.
up. That doesn't mean it's not going to be there.
So
Right. No, it's
while
not.
it
I'm
may
not.
be there, I do think that based on, you know, Wizards' previous help, quote unquote, for DMs, it's not great.
Not a great
So
track
unless
record.
they improve their particular writing with that, I'm not holding up my hopes for it being particularly useful for anybody but maybe new DMs.
Again, though, either way, this is all talking about GM intervention. I'm talking about the way the game is on its own. So yes, GM intervention can do a lot of magical things, but that's not really the point. Shit, where was I? Oh, okay.
Mhm.
A couple other examples I want. I mentioned the Druid shapeshifter ability in Dungeon World, so I'm just gonna read this one out and sort of explain the point. So, when you call upon the spirits to change your shape, you roll plus your wisdom. A 10 plus, you hold 3. On a 7 to 9, you hold 2. On a miss, you hold 1, in addition to whatever the GM says. So, hold in the context of Dungeon World and most Powered by the Apocalypse games is sort of like a little temporary currency that you have for your ability that you could spend to do things. It's kind of like an ammo count. The in addition to whatever the GM says part is anytime you roll a 6 or below in a Powered by the Apocalypse game, the GM gets to be like, okay, something bad happens to you. So in this case, you still get to shape change. The GM never tells you, cannot ever tell you, you don't shape change. They like can't take that away from you unless there's some sort of crazy fictional thing where it's like you're in a fucking anti-magic dimension or whatever. You know, shit like that, obviously. Fictional stuff. But like mechanically speaking, they can't tell you no. can't fail the roll. You take the physical form of any species whose essence you have studied or who lives in your land, basically, animal you're familiar with. You and your possessions meld into the species form, the usual stuff. You have innate abilities and weaknesses of the form: claws, wings, gills, breathing water instead of air. You still use your normal stats, but some moves may be harder to trigger. A house cat will find it harder to do battle with an ogre. GM will also tell you one or more moves associated with your new form. Spend 1 hold to make that move. Once you're out of hold, you return to your natural form. At any time, you may spend all your hold to revert. Things I like about this: you're not taking on any stat blocks. You're just saying, I turn into this animal. That's the first thing. That's already really free form. And it lets you do the Doric, I'm going to turn into a fly. And then you don't have to worry about a fly stat block. The druid just gets turned to the fly and do the thing. The hold mechanic, the GM gets to tell you, all right, cool. So in the form, let's go with the house cat example, I suppose. In the form of a house cat, you can climb walls, you can hide, and you could claw the shit out of someone. You get to spend one of your hold to just do that. Because you're that animal, you just get to do that. You don't even have to make a roll, you just go for it. Once you burn up all your hold, that's when you turn back. You'll also notice there's no timer on the shapeshifter ability in Dungeon World, because there's no timers on anything in Dungeon World because they don't care about time spans really. So the druid character could turn into a house cat and sneak around the house, break into the bad guy's home and stay there all day as the house cat. And if all they're doing is sort of hiding or moving around and acting like a cat, that's not necessarily using any of their hold. They could just do that all day long. Maybe they'll have to make a couple of normal moves, which is to say sort of the rough equivalent of a D&D check, stealth check. But they could just do that all day long and stay there. Also, to go back to the Doric and the Honor Among Thieves example, you can go from form to form. So there's that restriction's not there, and there's no limit. And you might say, okay, so how do you stop the druid from just doing this constantly? Every time you make a roll, there's a chance you fail the roll. Anytime you fail the roll, bad shit happens to you. Every time you have to shapeshift, you're taking that chance. That's sort of the primary balancing. Also,
so it's almost like wild magic for druids. Okay.
No, I wouldn't. No, so it's not.
Well, the punishment thing.
Well, no. So the punishment thing is a universal mechanic in the game. Anytime you roll a 7 to 9 so 7 to 9, you get a medium success, which is to say you get what you want at a cost. 6 and below, you might not get. You may get what you want, you may not, and something bad happens also. So it's like a fictional thing. It's more like failing a check in D&D. It's like, I would like to sell check. You fail? Okay, cool. You are now spotted. What do you do? So the druid example, you might shapeshift into the cat. If you failed that roll, you still get to shapeshift into the cat. You still get 1 hold. But some dude on the street saw you shapeshift and starts making a commotion. What do? You know what I mean? You put in okay, you get to do the thing, but now you have to respond to a problem. And that is, that ability I just love because of how freeform it is and how you could do so many cool ideas, and you could literally do the Doric scene with this mechanic, no problem. You know what I mean? I will say I rule it slightly different when I ran Dungeon World, where instead of telling the player what abilities their form has, I just say, what do you do as that animal? And if it's something that I felt is worthy of spending hold via the animal's innate abilities, then I just had them spend the hold rather than make a list, because I just didn't feel like making a list. So if a player's I turn into a bear and I use my bear's weight to tackle a dude, I'll be all right, spend 1 hold to do that. But that's sort of a me adjusting that rule ever so slightly. And then the other one, and Isaiah actually knows about this one, the fighter's signature weapon. And I mean, I don't even really got to say much about this. The fighter gets a signature weapon in Dungeon World, and they get to pick a bunch of enhancements and traits to define what the weapon looks like, how it works, what cool abilities it has. And I mean, that's as quintessential fighter shit. Like in terms of like the cinematic feel of a fighter character, like you have your specific weapon. You're a Belmont, you have your whip. You're Link, you have the fucking Master Sword. You know what I mean? Like that vibe is like, I mean, it doesn't get better than that, as far as I'm concerned. And on top of that, the sort of easy to hack nature of most Powered by the Apocalypse games means that if you can't make exactly what you want out of the fighter signature weapon, it's pretty easy to make a couple adjustments and be like, boom, bang, boom. So like Isaiah literally, when we played Dungeon World for like 2 sessions, Isaiah literally made a whip character, and we made some like small mechanical adjustments, like boom, whip. Yeah. Not much else to say about that one. I just think the signature weapon's fun. Oh, and that's what I was talking about, where I was like, the difference between the paladin and the fighter in Dungeon World is like, you could make the argument that the paladin is numerically better, but the fighter's signature weapon is such a cool and evocative thing that almost that one ability alone is enough to make you be like, yeah, I want to play a fighter instead. You know what I mean? And nobody else gets that ability too, which is a key point. That whole niche protection topic, right? If something is really cinematic and invokes the fantasy of a specific class, don't give that cool thing away to somebody else. Right? The druid's wild shape, nobody else gets to use that. The channel divinity is the cleric's thing. Well, the cleric and the paladin. So maybe that's a bad example, but bardic inspiration is the bard's thing. That's also, as an aside, part of the reason in D&D I hate how much spell crossover there is nowadays. I hate that a lot, like, there's no real spells that are unique to any of the classes because some subclass inevitably is going to give you the spells.
Yeah, there's a couple.
There's a few. There's a couple in there.
Like, I forgot what it's called. It came out in Xanathar's. It's the stone pillar spell. I always thought it was like a wizard, like sorcerer spell, but in 5e it's just a druid spell. Only druids can make stone pillars. I don't know why, but
I don't know. I like that.
Only them.
I don't know. For me, I really like the spell crossover in 5e because it does that. It does the thing that I really like, where it doesn't. Like if I take a class, I'm not necessarily pigeonholed into a role or theme. I can dabble in other ones, and I really appreciate that. So I definitely wouldn't count that as a negative.
It's such a, I don't know. It's like a fine line. I feel like it kills the fantasy of some.
Yeah, but again, Josh, this is the edition where everyone fucking multi-class, so you have people who are doing the Hexadin Source Lock, fucking whatever the hell.
This is true.
So you have people who are like, my thing is I'm the sorcerer magic, but also I have a pact with an Eldritch Abomination. Also, I'm in full plate. And you're like, what are you?
Matt out here just casually dropping his triggers to the world.
I love my buddy Wolf. I love him, but I do not enjoy the Hexadin things.
That's fair, bud.
I mean, it is.
I don't think anybody blames you.
It is.
It's just a DM thing. Like I don't actually take any actual offense to it, but it's just a thing I like to poke fun at because it's an easy target. I'm sorry.
It's fair.
It do be.
I mean, for me, it's like in my mind, if it were up to me, a spell like Entangle, for example, that would be Druid and Ranger only. Like there's just. I'm sure a lot of people disagree with me on this, but
I do like Ranger though. I like Ranger having it.
Ranger, the nature boys get the nature stuff, you know. Like
yeah, that's fine. And then the one nature paladin.
Yeah, so that's
the one that's so they like. I wear wood armor.
A little, I don't know. That's what I mean, right? It's a fine line because yes, the Green Knight is a thing, so it's like paladin get it, I guess, kinda. Yeah. It's a fine line.
Well, that's why the subclasses, again, 5e super big on subclasses. That's where like a lot of this crossing over comes from.
Well, I'm like both for it.
It can be annoying. It can also enhance.
I'm for and against it at the same time. What were you gonna say, Isaiah?
Oh, I was just gonna say. Well, it's the kind of like the Green Knight thing, right? It's like you get a like. I don't know. This might be a point of contention across people who like 5e, but I could give a fuck. I like the idea that you're like, oh, well, I want to play kind of like a hunter, but the ranger's not really my vibe, so I'll do some fighter, and like, you know, I'll do some Eldritch Knight to give them some nature based. But like, I like that you can do that, because like for me, I really do not like Wild Shape for Druid. Yeah. So if I want to play a nature caster, I can still do that and not feel like I'm losing shit on level ups because it's pumping a bunch of shit into Wild Shape, the thing that I don't care about.
It's so weird because, again, even Wizards of the Coast admitted that like Druids are one of the least played class in 5e, and you think and now they're trying to make it with 1D&D that Wild Shape is their main shtick. When
Wild Shape's always been their main shtick. Hold on.
You that's the thing. For Moon Druids, yes. Any other time I see someone playing. No. Anytime I see somebody else playing a Druid, they either do the thing where you have the Flame Druid they use their Wild Shape to summon a fire avatar.
Okay.
You have the Spore Druid who uses theirs to
undead
do more poison damage.
Yeah.
Also,
Isaiah, they gave you what you want too.
Yeah, go for it.
They did give you what you want because the other subclasses do use Wild Shape for different shit.
No, I know they do. I was just giving sort of an example. I
don't know. My thing is like the stereotypical Druid, the animal changing kind of is the shtick. Like,
well,
that is the very for me, honestly.
You're in the minority, Isaiah.
I don't think I am.
Because me and Isaiah are in the same boat because I always thought that it was the land druid. The land druid is basically a druid wizard. They are a magician. They are a magic user who uses magic from the land. And you're depending on what land you are.
I think I know where the source of this is.
Goddamn furries.
World of Warcraft.
Oh.
WoW is definitely an influence. I'm not going to say it's not, but I don't think it's just WoW. I think a lot of people.
I think that yes, a lot of people have this assumption, but that's because games like WoW have popularized the idea that druids should do this.
I feel like though, even in like mythology, the idea of the archetypal druid, they always turn into an animal at some point.
No, I feel like the animal shapeshifting is just kind of a thing that magic users did, not specifically druids.
Okay, yeah, I mean, maybe it's more of a general magic thing.
Well, kind of, because the Arthurial druids were just nature wizards.
Yeah, look at The Witcher.
They were more like the idea of a witch, like casting spells over a cauldron kind of shit. It wasn't like I turn into an animal. And for me, I think the archetypal druid is just like, I command the elements. Like, that's it. And that's what I want. I don't want to turn into a fucking squirrel.
Yeah. Circle
your hatred of the shapeshift. I do not.
I don't hate it. I just don't.
Well, you want
it to be a universal ability. I just don't care enough. Because I've played a druid once or twice, and I literally went, never gonna use this. Like, and the one time I did, I was the fucking wildfire druid for the one shot, and I was like, oh, this makes me not want to shoot myself in the fucking foot. I just don't.
I'm gonna bite tongues because I can't. Yeah, I get very heated on this one.
I guess I don't know.
I do have something I want to bring to the table. I brought something for show and tell today, teacher.
Matt, you brought things to the table?
I know.
Did you bring enough for the class?
I had one last example, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, so my example is actually something I'm currently using in my Strixhaven game, the quote-unquote knockoff Quidditch, also known as Mage Tower, which in the book it gives to you as just a skill challenge.
Isn't it like one roll?
So here, I'll copy paste this so you guys can see, but basically it's 3, I'm just going to say, they say phases, but it's 3 turns of skill challenge where the players do 2 rolls per turn. And then they give you a couple extra rules for like, if you want to cast a spell, you grant advantage. And, it's a lot of text, I'm sorry. But basically it just breaks down to a total of 6 skill checks. And then if you want to not do a skill for a turn, you can cast a spell. Which me and my players have been going back and forth, and we finally, I actually added a few phases. We tweaked some shit, and now the players enjoy doing it.
So
I enjoy doing it.
You have a question about this, Matt, or like?
No, he's using it as an example of what he would prefer to be more cinematic.
I prefer because
So here's my thing.
Yeah.
This is way too specific.
Yes,
It is
it is absolutely.
It is just way too specific for
100%.
what it is. It needed like it being specifically broken into phases is whatever.
Phases are fine.
But the fact that it's like,
The
yeah, this
specific
is what you
checks.
do. This is
Yeah.
what you do.
Yep.
Like not, oh, can I do this? And then you give them a check. It's you do this.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I prefer the normal or I guess 4th edition method of skill checks where there's a situation, me as a DM writes out a bunch of answers that the players can do depending on what skill they pick, and just let them pick the skills, and they might come up with even better answers than I have, or creative ways than I thought of. Like
Yes.
the whole Matt Colville tower thing. When I ran that, I didn't have any answers down. I just let my players all right, how do you escape the crumbling castle?
Right.
Skill challenge.
So
So
yeah, that's the thing is, yeah, absolutely, it's too specific. The fact that it calls out specific skills like acrobatics check to dash past the opposing team, wisdom insight check to anticipate the. I hate all that. Get all that out of here. I also don't like that it specifies the different level of casting, giving like a specific kind of benefit, because you're gonna tell me that fly and fireball give the same benefit in this scenario, right?
I will also say that this is meant for players between level 5 and 6. So they're just getting 3rd level spells, and then level 6 they'll have a few more slots.
I mean, yeah, that's fine.
So-
I'm not. It has nothing to do with the player level. What I'm saying is the fact that they specified spell level in any way, I think, is dumb, and the fact that they lumped all of them by level and are like, oh, 3rd level spells do this, 1st and 2nd do this, when the spells in the game do so many crazy different things, those 2 blocks of text should just not be there. Instead, what it should say is probably something along the lines of, if you can use a spell in a creative way, your GM could grant you advantage, or your GM could grant you a successful tick on the clock, something along those lines. Something that's way
will
more
say,
broad.
I left out that they did give an example for the whole first, like they said, like DM, I cast grease on the floor to make my ally slide faster across the field or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
they literally said that's like the one example they give in the book.
I know what their train of thought was. I just think trying to lump the spells all into one big basket and like 1st and 2nd and then 3rd is just not like casting a 3rd level or higher. Casting a spell of 3rd level or higher counts as a successful ability check for the purpose of determining the winning team. What you're saying is whether I cast fly or I blow up the enemy team with fireball, it's the same effect either way. That's goofy. Like that's not. That just feels like a very clinical game designy mechanical X does Y. That's all that is.
At that point, it doesn't even feel like you're playing a game.
You're not in
the game.
You're just you're solving a puzzle. Sort of
What
thing.
were you gonna say, Isaiah? Sorry, I know you were chiming in earlier.
I was gonna say, weirdly enough, for me, I don't feel like my personal beef is that the rules are too stringent. I just think there's not enough of them, weirdly enough.
Okay,
So in my home game, I've actually added 2 phases with different skills.
I know you said that, but
yeah.
I mean like, I don't even mean like phases. Like I want rules for intercepts. I want rules for ball passing. I want rules for catching and like.
See the problem.
That's kind of what I was about to get into.
Wait, okay, hold on, because I feel like I think the thing so as I was thinking, it's brain. There's two. There's 2 camps. There's 2 camps in this scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're playing Mage Tower in the Strixhaven game. If you want the Harry Pottage Quidditch match scene, you need to do what Isaiah is saying. You need to add more to it to get that really cinematic, like turning the Quidditch, like the Quidditch scene and being like, yes, we're going to play this out for an extended period of time. Yeah. If you want this to just be like a little quick moment, the players go out, have a match, come back, then you can pare down and simplify the rules. So you have to decide. That's a big thing with like deciding what direction you want the game design to go in, and then saying, is this something I want to spend time with that I want to be big and cinematic, or is this sort of a footnote to something else?
Right, because the whole next big thing of the campaign is mainly playing this game, and one of the other things.
So it should be more than.
Yeah, so besides adding the 2 other phases, which my players really liked, the other thing is the magic rules. Now we're trying to decide back and forth between the players, like, they didn't enjoy the fact that just like I have to spend a turn to cast the spell,
just does it,
and then all I'm doing is giving someone else advantage.
Yep.
Can't I just cast the spell?
That's not cinematic. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just giving advantage.
I've been bouncing back and forth on it because I'm like, this may add some complication into it, but also it's going to be probably pretty fucking fun. So
Yes.
I might just, that's the thing where I'm like, I might say,
Yes.
but then the other part is the 3rd level spell and higher rule, which also then when we start getting the higher level spells, shit's going to get wonky. And just not saying, like, not trying to, like, call out players, whatever. Only one of my players by this point will be able to cast 3rd level spells. So that means if, like, hypothetically, I threw an entire team of wizards at my players, entire team of wizards be like, all right, so the entire other mage tower team is going to cast fireball, every single one of them.
Okay. Yeah.
And that would be a dickhead move.
Yes.
That would be like super unfun.
Right, because you're just solving the puzzle with the answer that is the correct. Yeah. Sam, say your thing, and then I have some ideas.
So, to build on what Isaiah was saying, and this is why I say it's too specific, by going the opposite direction and making it, hey, like, here's an example of rules, then the DM can just make rulings for those things. Like, yes, having catching, intercepting, passing, whatever rules is perfectly fine. It is a good way for people to visualize what they can do in the match. But I think that having, like, if you're going to do the phases thing, you can't be too specific if you're not going to be broad. Because, when I say broad, I mean, like, if you're going to be specific, you have to have a very large scope of what people can do versus, hey, you can do these 2 things or you can cast a spell.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, also kind of building in from what Isaiah was saying. So, like, if it were my job to make this mini game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make this, let's say, or actually, fuck it. Let's say I'm running Strixhaven, and I want this to be the big Quidditch scene. And I forget, I don't remember. Is it like the 3rd Harry Potter movie where they have like the big tournament or something?
The fourth. That's literally what I'm basing the
4th
thing.
Okay, yeah. So they have like a big Quidditch tournament, right?
They have one in every movie, but
wasn't there
the tournament?
The tournament's like a big thing at some point.
So there's the professional one.
Yeah.
But I forget which book that's
the
on.
4th one.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
The one with
right.
Victor Crumb, that's the 4th one.
Yeah. Okay. So you want this scene, the Mage Tower session to be a big cinematic moment. You're like, yeah, we're going to make the thing. The players are going to play. They're going to be on the team. They're going to do the cool shit. All right. How do you handle it? The phases are fine. I think you doing it in some sort of semi-turn structure is probably a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
The magic rules, throw all that shit out and just say, you can use a spell on your turn and tell me how the spell is effective or helpful, and I will tell you what the response is. Maybe you have to make a check. Maybe it would depend on the spell, right? All right, the ball carrier I cast fly on. Cool. The ball carrier gets advantage because he just gets to now fly over everyone. That's a pretty straightforward one.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to fireball the ground in front of the enemy team. Okay. Enemy team's going to make a roll to try and like dodge around your fireball. Like make it basically a situation of, tell me what you're doing, much like a skill challenge. Tell me what you're doing with the spell, and then I will respond in kind with what you might have to do, what roll you might have to make, etc. That's how I'd handle the magic situation. I would not specify it in any way because, again, the fireball versus fly thing is like so silly to me. And it is funny, Matt, that you mentioned, the enemy team of wizards could just all cast fireball and automatically win, which is like
exactly that's
literally
what.
Yeah,
I know. Which is why I've had I already made a bunch of the teams. They're not all like mages.
Yeah, because that would be awful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but again, that's why I'm like, it's like taking consider the rules and then also considering my players and then being like, if I do this, they will be at disadvantage because of this.
Yeah.
Because only one player is going to be able to do this like 3rd level spell nonsense.
So in terms of like how you would handle checks and stuff. My train of thought would be, okay, kind of like what Isaiah was saying, rules for specific things. If you're trying to catch up to a dude, maybe you have to make a check, or maybe you could base it on movement speed. That's kind of, or maybe you could just have a rule where like you spend your movement for the turn catching up to another player. In terms of rules, are like, all right, you have to make some kind of check to pass. The default, I think probably what you could do is have like a default assumption of what the check might be, but then be open to other possibilities, right? So like to throw the ball and pass it might be, the default assumption is an athletics check. But if your big brain sorcerer player explains how he uses mage hand or some shit to do it, maybe have him make a spell attack roll to pass the ball. You know what I mean? That's the kind of, that I would leave it open. I would give like, this is what you normally would be, and then leave it open to other ideas. Because you want the creative, because the thing is, right, you want the creative cinematic moment of like, I came up with a good idea, I'm gonna fucking rope-a-dope a dude. You know, you want the moment where Harry flies up into the fucking clouds and goes all the way up and up and up and up and up until he eventually catches the snitch, right? You want to like enact that in some way. Like, you know, maybe Harry's making multiple checks. Maybe he throws a spell to like boost his, maybe he casts haste on his broom to try and catch up faster. You know, you want to keep it broad so that you can have those creative ideas, but then the sort of cinematic flair part comes from, here's some suggested ways the player can overcome it, and then here's some other stuff they could do if they have a cool idea. You know, basically what I'm saying is structure it like a fucking Powered by the Apocalypse move. Have them make the roll, have a couple of outcome possibilities from the roll, you know?
Okay. A
big part of Powered by the Apocalypse games, and everyone take another shot again if you're not already dead, is the basic moves have, when you roll them, have multiple things like underneath them. They have like bullet points, like the actually here, hold on.
Yeah. I will also specify. Actually, I'll ask this because this is how I'm going to be running it. Normally in the book, they give me a set. Actually, so normally in the book, they only play this fucking game once. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm doing it multiple times.
Absolutely should be multiple times.
So stupid. In the book, how it's normally supposed to be run is they give you a set DC, and that's it. It's the same DC for every fucking phase.
No, it's gotta be. And it's gotta be a changing DC. Absolutely.
Well, so what I'm doing at the moment, this might change, is I have a bunch of NPC teams with various amounts of skills and abilities and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm basically doing it as contested skill checks.
Yeah.
So
absolutely, because again, see, this is the thing, right, Matt? You're teasing this little mini game out to make it a bigger moment. So adding more granularity like that makes sense.
Yeah. So me and my player, like we've done 3 different versions of this. Each time trying to update it and make it better, so that when I get to this, when we as a the gaming group get to the anime tournament, Mage Tower tournament, like we'll finally have a fucking game and everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
Because even right now, after the 3rd game, and we're like, all right, it's like 90% complete. We just need to tweak 1 or 2 things, and I think we'll be good for the tournament. I'm like, okay, all right, this is way better than where we were in the beginning.
I think honestly, for stuff like this, you need to think fiction first, not mechanics first. And 5e by default is mechanics first. I think you want to go, all right, what's the fictional thing I'm trying to go for? Okay, this is what I'm going for. What is the mechanical reaction? This is the reaction. What is the fictional resolution? You know? So player says, I cast grease on the floor so that my teammate with the ball can try and like fucking ice skate around the enemy. All right, cool. You cast grease on the floor. Player with the ball, you have advantage for this roll. Give me an acrobatics roll as you try and fucking ice skate your way around. You know what I mean? That's the kind of flow you want to have. Fictional thing, throws grease. Mechanical resolution, advantage. Fictional finish, ice skates around. Well, also mechanical roll plus advantage. Fictional finish, you manage to rope-a-dope the enemy. All right, you rope-a-dope around the enemy. They're now confused as they're trying to turn around and catch up with you. what's your next move? You know what I mean? That really like fiction, mechanic, resolution, and like keep that kind of a snap flow and have a guideline of like, generally, if a player would like to pass a ball, they make an athletics check. Generally, if a player would like to dodge a tackle, they make an acrobatics check. And then be open to like suggestions. Mm-hmm. And if you want to like add a little bit more, you know, if you want to get a little bit more mathy on certain things, because that's the kind of vibe 5e has, you can. But since you've already set up the opposing team's NPC stat blocks, you're kind of already doing that anyway. Like you've kind of already done that step by setting up the enemy team. So you're probably fine.
Yeah, and spoilers, not spoilers for my players, but like each team is themed for a different like maneuver or thing they can do. Nice. So it's going to be really cool.
That's a good idea. I like that. Yeah.
I just keep thinking of fucking Blood
Bowl. That's also, side note, Matt, that's absolutely cinematic as fuck. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a thing in the sports anime, right? Like, oh, what's your cool fucking technique thing? Oh, I do this fucking crazy shit where I like jump off everyone's head to dunk the basketball. You know, like that's totally like the cinematic vibe of the sports competition arc.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm just thinking about like boxing anime and shit and how ridiculous that shit gets.
What was it? Was it not an example I'm using against my players, but an example of a team I saw where it's like, it's just a bunch of like, magicians and other magic casters that specifically, do earth magic.
Yeah.
Of some sort. And it's just like, what does that mean? It's like, well, that guy does sand stuff. That guy literally just makes pillars of stones to knock the ball around all the time. Yeah. This is just an earth elemental.
It's the pro bending circuit, right? In Avatar. It's totally that vibe. I mean, I was thinking about too, there's another game who I think only Isaiah has played this, but a super giant game, Pyre. Actually, Sam, have you played Pyre?
Yeah.
Okay. I have only played Hades in terms of Supergiant games.
Okay, fair enough. So in Pyre, you're basically playing magical fantasy soccer to get out of prison, sort of.
Is that the one with the girl with the like,
big horns?
Gigantic devil horn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've seen that art.
Yes. That's Joe Dario from Pyre. Yeah.
I'm like, your horns are like way too big for your fucking neck.
Yeah.
You leave Jodie alone.
I love her. So yes, in Pyre, like your main crew doesn't have a theme because, you're the main characters. Of course, you get to be more diverse, right? But all the enemy teams you fight, one team is all treant dudes. Another team is big, weird snake ladies. Another team is all harpies. So it's like, that's totally a weird fiction trope.
Now I'm mad I didn't do a team that was the Secret Snake Club.
It's all you want to.
Just make them all UNT.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Damn, hold on, I gotta rewrite some stuff.
That might be a good idea.
Schnisha good from Lake Ontario, Canada.
It's funny too, Matt, because I remember a while ago when you mentioned the Mage Tower shit in Strixhaven, and I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. And then I read that chunk of the rules, and I was like, that's it. That's all.
It's basically captured the flag on a massive field, but instead of flags, you're capturing animals.
Yeah,
with the mascot creatures.
It's just like
with spells.
It's sort of like what you're doing, Matt, is absolutely what I would have been doing if I was running this, because I was so like, it just really exemplified my frustration with 5e when I was like, oh, this really cool idea that they have that's like really evocative. And then I look at what they give you and I'm like, oh, you gave me basically nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So it went from being this fun, vague and evocative idea to like not very good cinematic design. And now I'm just kind of like, okay.
And I know like
it takes the wind out of my sails.
Yeah. I know Jacob from XP level 3, he made a whole Strixhaven video. And one of the things he specifically said of, Strixhaven, the main thing of the campaign is very roleplay heavy. It is very roleplay heavy.
Yeah, which is fine.
It's extremely bare bones, and I've had to add a lot of stuff to make it work, and my players love it. But yeah, the Mage Tower thing, like, again, I've had to change it 3 separate times, and still, it's not like I'm not 100% happy with it yet.
So no, but I think you're definitely you're in the right brain space, I would say. Because the crux of this This whole. Well, it was okay. Hold on. I want to bring up one more. I want to bring up an Apocalypse World example that I like a lot.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna bounce off of it. I had more examples, but it's fine. So one of the playbooks in Apocalypse World, playbooks being basically classes, is the Gunlugger, and the Gunlugger is your Mad Max character. And when I say Mad Max, I mean the dude. They're the big badass. They're the tough motherfucker. They're gonna beat everyone's ass. Nobody messes with them. That's kind of the Gunlugger's archetype. They also have a lot of guns, as you might imagine.
No.
One of their moves is called "Not to be fucked with," in all caps, which I love a lot. And what this move says is, Apocalypse World does that a lot. They have another move called Insano like Drano. But one of their moves is called "Not to be fucked with." And what this says is, in battle, you count as a small gang with harm and armor according to your gear. What does that mean to count as a small gang? In the context of Apocalypse World, when you're fighting a group of dudes, if they're a bigger group than you are, your armor and your harm, which is to say your damage, go down by 1 point. And 1 point is significant in Apocalypse World because everyone effectively has 6 health. So 1 point matters. So if you're one person and 10 dudes jump you, your armor and health are effectively down by 1. The Not to be fucked with ability means you count as up to 15 dudes. So if you're the Gunlugger and 15 guys jump you, you can reasonably beat and kill all of them. And it's not even hard. Like, that's just a thing you could do. You basically need 1, maybe 2 good rolls, and you killed the whole gang. And I love that ability, right? Because it's the ultimate fantasy of, like, I'm the biggest badass in the room. It's literally the scene, I guess, again, minor spoilers. It's the scene in Honor Among Thieves when Holga picks up the brick and beats the shit out of 6 dudes with a brick. That's literally what that is. It's like, oh yeah, she's the biggest badass in the room. She's the cool fucking barbarian. She could just go to Clown Town on 6 guys at once. Shit like that, I fucking love. And, you could make the argument like, well, Rage lets you do that. And it does to a degree. It lets you do it in a very numerical kind of fashion. But yeah, like, it does sort of get the point across. It also depends on what 6 dudes you're fighting and what level your barbarian is and all this other shit, right? Which Apocalypse World doesn't have levels or CR or anything like that. So it's a different, tonally different vibe. Your barbarian can absolutely fight 6 commoners at level like 5, for example, or 6 guards at level 5, no problem, for example. Although it won't be very exciting. It'll be the guards make a bunch of attacks, the barbarian makes a bunch of attacks, the guards make a bunch of, but you can do it. That's where you get into the descriptive realm to spice things up. But yeah, the Not to be fucked with ability is like, it's just so good. And I've seen it play out in game in such like awesome ways. It also means when you're in a 1v1 confrontation with someone as the Gunlugger, you will just absolutely clown that fool. Like, you're just gonna beat the shit out of them. Nice. They have very little chance. But really, what that move in Apocalypse World really highlights for me is the idea of, I have this idea, and this is the big crux, right? I have this idea in my head. I should be able to do this. This is the cool concept in my brain, If I'm the fighter, I should be able to charge the dragon. And then you open up the rule book and you read this move or this ability or this spell or this power or whatever, and you go, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Now it is represented, and now I'm way more excited to play. If I'm playing the cleric and I'm like, man, it'd be sick if I could like summon my god, and then you read Divine Intervention and you go, oh, let's fucking go. I'm playing a cleric. This is gonna be lit. And then you get sad because it's only a 10% chance, but that's beside the point. It's like that whole thing, that is literally the thing for me personally that is the thing that made me like really get into tabletop, is having an idea about like a certain kind of fantasy of a character class, of a story, of a, you know, whatever. And then finding the game that perfectly fits what I need and being like, yes, it's a beautiful marriage, you know. And that's why I personally, doing the thing where you're like, oh, we'll just, you know, hack 5e to do whatever you want. That's the real reason I don't like doing that, is because I want that marriage to be easy and seamless. I don't want to have to like fight for it. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of people are going to disagree and be like, no, just fucking do it for it. Like, you're just being lazy. Like, whatever. It's like, when I said, you know, oh, I really want to play a game that feels like Peaky Blinders. And then I looked at Blades in the Dark and went, ah, it's Peaky Blinders with some fantasy bullshit. I'm in. It's such a, like, just gets me so excited to play. You know what I mean? Actually, shit, I don't know. Sam, maybe... I distinctly remember when we were getting into Souls of Steel that you kind of were on a similar wavelength with that game, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. That game really
invokes so many good ideas. Shame it wasn't finished.
I know, right? It just... I think one of the big things is that it's like, at least with like the mech creation aspect, it allowed you to, obviously there's some DM intervention, but it allowed you, the player, to decide what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, oh, hey, player, this is the class, this is how it works, have fun.
Yeah.
And it being very specific. And it's like, okay, you know, having the ability to make a mech, and it's just like, okay, you know, I can do all this cool shit, but because I have this negative where it directly affects the play style of me, and I'm deciding it, not the designer. So that definitely makes it feel way more anime.
Yes, that game felt very anime for sure. I mean, we literally had what, like, for Isaiah and Matt, and I guess been listening, we literally had a player who, her mech was like made of like a liquid metal, essentially. So she could like amorphous blob like between tight spaces and shit with the big fucking robot. And like it had so many like good little moments. I forget exactly what the downside was. I want to say she was like more vulnerable or something like that. But
they were more vulnerable to fire, I believe.
Some kind of, it's more vulnerable to something along less armor or something like that. But it was like such a good little, like, yeah, delicious.
Josh, you just thank you. You just gave me the idea. I finally have my idea for my Plasmod character.
Oh my god.
It's going to be Beast Barbarian Plasmod character, and then when they transform into the beast mode, they're just a slime person who gets fur covering their entire body. So they're just a liquid slime ball. Fur.
How did anything I say invoke that?
Thank you.
What?
Matt, are you okay?
No.
Okay.
Now with Matt, that sounds amazing.
I don't know how I invoked that other than the slime correlation, but okay.
Like, I have no problems with this. It's a great idea, Matt. But like,
also what?
Just where did like, how did fur get added to this?
Yeah,
I don't
know. Okay. All right. Cool. Sure.
Just happens.
I'm not even that.
Just let it happen. It's fine.
I have to let it happen. I can't stop it. It's here.
Anyone got anything they'd like to add or ask or throw in?
No, let him cook.
Ooh, Matt, I'm not letting Matt cook.
Yeah.
I refuse.
I don't know. I've never tasted Matt's cooking.
Listen,
that was a bad joke.
I'm ashamed to admit, but I can only cook
steaks yesterday. Shit was so good.
I can only cook breakfast foods. I'm sorry. I'm a Brenner kind of guy.
It's all. Never mind. Nope, not. That's bait.
It's all ogre now.
This is bait. I refuse. Somebody take us somewhere else.
No.
Oh, fuck. All right. Well, I don't know if I have any. As per usual, I don't know if I don't think I have any other. I mean, I have a couple other examples, but it's fine. I don't need to hammer them home with the idea I'm going for.
Yeah.
I was just thinking. I was like,
damn, I didn't think I derailed that hard. Holy shit.
no, you didn't. It's just as I was talking.
No, Matt, take pride.
It wasn't the derailment. It was like as I was talking, another idea just like slapped into my brain. I was like, it's too much. We're going down too deep of a well, I think, if I go onto that one. Because I was just sort of thinking about, I was like, all right, what kind of shit would I do if I really wanted to like pump up the cinematic vibe of 5e? And I was like, yeah, I can't. It's too deep of a rabbit hole. Too deep of a rabbit hole. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, when particularly, because most people are gonna homebrew their games at some point. I think the real takeaway for me personally, so many other games, and from listening to people who do design and et cetera, and from reading other people's homebrew and shit too, is like, for me, the way that you really get the best cinematic vibe, the way you really get that tone, is thinking about what that core fantasy, what that core idea is, and how you can use any kind of mechanics that are present to sort of boost it up. That idea of spell slots going into Divine Smite and how that sort of mechanically reinforces the idea that the smites are magically fueled, stuff like that. And all this being said, if you just want to play like a war game style game, then like you can throw all this shit out the window and just crunch the numbers. You know what I mean? Like if you just want to crunch those numbers, then crunch those numbers. But
I think I've asked this before because I know you. Like, do you play Theater of the Mind that much in your games, or do you don't like? Yeah,
I don't.
Have you tried? Like,
yes,
because I know like Theater of the Mind that a lot of people end up doing that because they don't like the tactical grid of the map, and I feel that Theater of the Mind might end up being more cinematic, just because of that. Everyone's using their imaginations, but there's no battle map. You just are literally looking at the monsters, your tokens, your minis, or whatever the fuck. And everyone's just describing shit.
Yes, that is absolutely true, Matt. And yes, you're kind of right, on the right track. That's kind of what me and Sam were talking about with the sort of not using a grid-based system and how that can feel like more evocative of the cinematic feel for us. But the reason I don't use Theater of the Mind is there's a couple of reasons. The main thing is because the game is not designed with that premise in mind, that immediately means, okay, I have to make concessions. I have to do some retooling. I'm going to run into frustrations. I'm going to have to make calls that the game is not going to help me in any way with. I have to deal with the fact that the game was not designed in that fashion. I'm doing something different. So now that marriage thing I'm talking about has broken. That's the first thing. And that's probably the main reason for me personally. Oh, GM, I would like to throw the fireball down the hall. Okay, cool. You're going to hit your friend and you're going to hit the three zombies. GM, what if I do it like this and curve it around? Or the friend's like, what if I move back a little? It's like, okay, now we're having this little sort of back and forth discussion, and you can do it, but the game wants you to just be like, is the ally in the AoE? They get hit. Is the ally not in the AoE? They don't get hit on the map. The other thing is, when people sit down to play a game, and if presuming they've read the game and you haven't just like randomly thrown them into it, they probably have some, they have some notions about how the game's going to go. They want it to feel a certain way. If somebody's read 5e, they're probably going to, well, maybe not 5e. Maybe 5e is a bad example because 5e doesn't explain this very well. But, people basically if you're playing that kind of game, you kind of expect the tactical battle grid map. You know, that's like part of the vibe. And if you're playing that game, presumably you want that. So I'm not trying to like take that away. You know what I mean? Like Isaiah was saying, he likes using the grid map. If we all signed up to play 5e and then we sat down session 1 and I go, by the way, we're doing literally everything in Theater of the Mind, Isaiah had probably been like, oh, well, that's all right. That's a little annoying. You know what I mean? So it's kind of it's like a combination of things, but fighting with the rules is the big one for me, and trying to, and you can design your own sort of subsystems to deal with it, but like, I don't want to necessarily, and I don't even hate them. Honestly, here's the other thing: I don't hate the grid map, like tactical combat stuff necessarily. I find it more laborious, and I find it more tiring for sure. Like I get tired of it quicker for sure. But I don't hate it. You know, I agreed to run 5e. I knew that I was going to be doing that. You know what I mean? Like it's not like I made that decision without knowing. So it's just sort of, you know, different games, different vibes. You know what I would love though? I would love it if Wizards made a little supplemental book that sort of retooled everything into a Theater of the Mind system. That'd be cool. I'd be into that. And they did it a little tiny bit in the DMG, but I wasn't very satisfied with it. It felt kind of like, yeah, you tried.
It's so weird because most of the people in Wizards of the Coast have said that we play Theater of the Mind, but the rules that they give aren't the full rules of the context that the Wizards use. And I know people like, you know, Sly Flourish. I've shown you guys, like, he made an updated, like, way more detailed version of Theater of the Mind rules that help a lot of people out. But most 5e people want official, like, better Theater of the Mind rules to use to help them.
Yeah.
Because Wizards had kind of admitted this in the last couple of weeks that there is stuff that they use in-house that they did not put into their printed books for some fucking reason. That would help people run their game way better.
Very weird.
It is weird.
And it's like the monsters, like their monster system. What they've printed out in DMG, what they printed out in Xanathar's guide, is not all the things that they use in-house when determining monster CR. And it's and just recently discovering this is like, why?
Yeah.
You would make all our lives so much better. Why are you not doing these things? What the fuck?
Yeah.
Why
so
use separate
so
rules
Theater of the
than
Mind
your players to do things?
So like an actual update, which Chris Perkins has mentioned
updated Theater of the Mind rules.
Yeah, they're gonna do like the Wizard. They're basically saying like all the stuff that they've been, I don't even want to say hiding or withholding. The stuff that they didn't put in the 2014 books, they're going to update and make better. And one of those has been Theater of the Mind. They're going to, you know, Chris Perkins has said he's going to teach you how to actually do it.
I hope.
I hope
those are solid rules and don't feel kind of sludgy, but you know, see. Yeah. But that's an interesting. I mean, that's exciting. I think because you know, and maybe I'm wrong, but and this is sort of a different topic, but it's within the same realm. Maybe this, honestly, now I'm thinking about it, this could be an episode topic potentially, but like. I feel like the vibe I've gotten from most people, most tabletop players, most people don't really want the grid map battle system. I feel like the majority of people are kind of over that. And the reason that it's in the game still and is in a lot of games still is a lot of it, I think, is because of just legacy, you know, and history. I mean, with 5e in particular, there's a lot of things in 5e that literally the designers have said, the only reason we kept this in the game is for the legacy and the brand, right? You know what I mean? Like Fireball is in the game and it's overpowered because of the brand. They still use a D20 because of the brand. It's the thing. It's what you do. You know what I mean? There's certain things they won't, you know, the equipment table, which people have, I mean, us included, have lambasted for a long time for being totally pointless, but it's part of the sort of legacy of D&D. It's like, yeah, the equipment table has always been there because it used to be more important. And I think, and again, I could be wrong, but I feel like the temperature gauge I'm getting on the situation. People are sort of over the grid map, you know?
Maybe because I don't mean
like
Isaiah. I don't know. I feel like I don't see it, but maybe it's just because, like, again, most of my table experience is through digital stuff like Roll20, where it is mostly very grid based, and certain other virtual tabletops like what's the one on
I don't think
Steam,
the virtual
Fantasy Grounds, where they treat it more like a video game.
Yeah,
which
honestly,
yeah,
though,
some people like. I don't.
I don't think virtually or not matters though, because you could very easily just not play on the grid map on a VTT.
You can.
I mean, I've done it a bunch. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
I don't think that's a huge.
I'm just saying.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm not hearing it from the circles.
I mean, the
of
fact
D&D
that
I'm partaking.
Well, I mean, the fact that this Sly Flourish thing you're talking about exists, and the fact that the WotC staff use Theater of the Mind, I think that's pretty telling.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess out of your random curiosity, like I lean more away from using a grid system. I prefer that less. I think, Sam, you're on the same boat as me. Yeah.
I think it depends on the game, like
That's
the
a
way that
cop-out.
it's designed. No, hold on. So I do prefer it when I am trying to make something cinematic happen, because like playing D&D, sure, it can be used for that, but like it doesn't evoke the same like image as playing something like Souls of Steel has with me, So if I'm looking to be very, cinematic with my approach to my character or whatever, I prefer to not have the grid system. If I don't care, then like, I'll live. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I guess let's put it this way: if there's a game you really like and the game has a system for both, which one?
Probably depends on the rules of the game, because like D&D technically does. I would prefer a grid system in that case, but like if we're not talking, so this has a range of 60 feet and it's a 30-foot blast radius, and this, like, I don't care then. But if it's the D&D system where it's like, you have this, and this, I'm gonna be like, hey, buddy, can I just?
Well, I mean, I'm the premise I'm saying is assuming that the game built up both systems kind of equally, because D&D sort of tacked on the Theater of the Mind rules a little bit later down the road.
Probably Theater of the Mind.
Isaiah and Matt, where do you fall?
I mean, I also sort of sit on the fence, but I would probably say Theater of the Mind.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm surprised. I thought you were gonna say.
No, don't get me wrong. I like grid-based combat. I have no problems with it. But it, I don't know, because like when I do it, like I have a habit of big braining plans, and if I don't have a grid, it's harder for me to do that. It's harder for me to sort of make.
Well, gridless doesn't mean mapless. I think that's an important distinction.
But like, so you lose out on things like positioning without a grid. Like you can have a map, but you lose a level of like concrete positioning.
So here's the thing, though, not necessarily, because a lot of the time what ends up happening, I mean, we literally, when we played Star Wars, this was the case. Like, you don't have the grid for positioning, but often, it'd be like, all right, can you like throw down a map and show us where we're at? Yeah, everyone's here, and here. Like you could do positioning in that sense.
You could. It's very basic. That's why I said you lose a level of like assuredness. You can literally say, okay, I'm going to put this character here because literally nothing can get past them. I can put these two characters behind them and start slinging things and providing cover. I can have this character go around the side of this. I enjoy that level of strategic thinking.
I mean,
so maybe I like grid-based more. Yeah.
I mean, I will say this. I definitely, I'll say for sure, if I'm GMing, 100% gridless. I prefer. If I'm a player, I'm more inclined to be okay with the grid, but that's because when you're GMing you have more bullshit to deal with.
You do, yeah.
Surprise.
But even then, when I'm GMing, I don't like when I feel like combat is just okay, then you do this and then you do this. There's a level of like, if I'm having things attack my players, I will often put my enemies in formations, so the players go, oh shit, they're actually thinking strategically, which makes them think strategically, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think again, you lose a level of that with gridless or purely theater of the mind combat. I've done some cool stuff. I've played in one where like we were camping around a massive oak tree, and my character was, I can't remember what it's called. So suspended camping, when you like sleep in the tree. So I could rain down hell from people with my musket up in the tree and provide cover, and that was cool. But it always felt like I wish I could literally see how things are playing out. And I didn't have to constantly ask the GM, okay, who's where, what's where, who's being attacked by what. I could just see it and go, okay, I can understand what's going on.
I mean, part of that is having practice with doing a theater of the mind system, because get better at being clear about that more often.
I'm not saying, yeah,
I don't know. I feel like you're being a little too binary about it. Like, one is capable of this and one is not capable of this.
Well, it's one has a map that you can one has as very strict parameters that it follows. The other one's a little more loose. So you're going to have a more detailed understanding of a map if you can see the map and you have a guaranteed understanding of what a distance is.
Yes, but if a game is designed with the intention of not using a grid system, it's usually designed in such a fashion that you don't need to worry about those specifics as much. You know, like, they are not part of, like, if nothing is described in specific foot increments, then you don't need to worry about measuring specific foot increments. You know what I mean? If it's just measured in like near, far, farther.
No, I don't, but I like it. That's the thing. Like, I enjoy doing that. I find that fun.
Matt, where do you fall?
Grid, because I can always make the grid more cinematic just through my descriptions, or, you know, getting a nice, bright, colorful map, and the players can, you know, be like, hey, is that coin actually on the table? Yeah, sure, why not? All right, cool. I grab the coin and I flick it at the guy's eyeball. And I'm like,
again,
sure, yeah, sure, why not?
Again, though, gridless doesn't mean mapless. I feel like you guys are assuming no map. Like, you can still have a map. You're just not moving everything in specific 5-foot increments or whatever.
Yeah,
increments.
I guess I don't know. I don't feel like the 5-foot increments are that bad. Like,
I'm not saying bad.
Think about it that way.
But what I'm saying is, like, you can do a system that's not a grid-based system and have like zones, for example, is a really in between, where it's like, you players, you're in zone 1, bad guys are in zone 2, zone 3 is the area beyond them. You know, like, again, that's what I'm saying. Like, gridless is not mapless. You can still have a lot of that.
Well, so how about this for an analogy? A gridless system plays, and just let me follow this to the end. A gridless system plays kind of like Mega Man Battle Network. There is a level of strategic positioning that you can do, and that is useful, and like on some level you need. But a game like Fire Emblem, you have far more minute control of what's going on. I prefer the Fire Emblem approach.
I haven't played either of those games, so I can't really refute.
Yeah,
or back up that statement.
No. That's a fairly decent way of saying it. I do think, however,
Sam says that makes sense, so I'll have to trust him.
I assume it does. I just don't know.
Battle Network is a little like it's close. I think it's just hard to put that into a video game format, because inherently video games are binary with like a grid system. I would say it's, oh god, I can't give a video game analogy for that, but yes, like there's less control over where your character is. People were actually, it'd be better to say it's like a character action game. But turn-based, which, you know, doesn't help, but what are you gonna do?
I could started this, because now more ideas are flowing in my head. We'll cut it off here. We'll cut it off here. We'll maybe have to particular topic that has come up now. No promises, but maybe. All right. Anyway, this has been us. We have done the thing. I forgot to do this in the beginning, but please follow us on Twitter. Hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and maybe leave a comment if you want to tell us why we're stinky poo-poo heads or we're bad or whatever. It all helps the algorithm. I don't care what you say to me.
Kind of rude, but okay.
I'm just being